This is sort of how as above, so below works. Um, when you know that I've mentioned this before. Let's say, for instance, that you're in another universe, or even if you were like on another planet. Make it simple. Let's bring it down to scale. I'm on another planet. Somebody calls me up on the phone just to make this simple, or I could get a telepathic communication, right? And says, "Hey, buddy boy, guess what? We got a problem over here. We got a planet motherboard, and it's got a virus running in it." Okay. Well, if you've ever worked hazmat, you know what a containment zone is, right? Now, to his credit, Dr. Robert O. Young, because he's gifted, he makes it very simple. Okay. And this is how simple it actually is. Okay. He mentioned about a virus doesn't exist unless it's been isolated, which is an ISO. You know what an ISO is. You know what an ISO standard is when it comes to a frame rate speed with holographic technology, right? Okay. Frame rate speed, ISOs, and then he mentions the word isolate. Now, I've covered gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, using gold detectors, superconductors, silver and gold, right? Okay. High speed. See, if you're not able to run as fast as the fastest, whatever that is, you won't be able to detect it because you're not fast enough. It moved right by you. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't even be aware of it. Now we're into what's called the observer effect, remember? Because whatever vibration you're running on, you're not going to be able to perceive what it is you're trying to measure if you don't have the ability to measure in vibration what it is you are in vibration. Something else that is running at a far higher rate of speed than you are in consciousness. And that's called what? Bandwidth, the width of the wave. Now we're in the vibration frequencies. Okay? So if you're an eternal being, if you're not running at that eternity, then you're not going to be able to catch up to eternity if you're not experiencing eternity. Which means if you're running on eternal fire and you're lit on fire, right, you're going to need a lot of water and oil. Slow that motor down, baby. You'll burn yourself up. Right? In other words, you will be the spirit of fire everywhere that you go. You'll be burning everything up everywhere that you go in that light. So he mentioned about how this virus stuff, okay, in order for it to be measured, to know that it exists, would have to be purified or isolated. And that means that if you're running on the hottest fire, it doesn't exist anymore, does it? As a matter of fact, it wasn't even there. That's right. It doesn't exist. Because eternal fire will burn it off quicker than it ever got through, which means it can't experience that much fire without being incinerated, calcified. That's a message from Dr. Robert O. Young and what he was trying to translate. It doesn't exist because to isolate it, to be able to put it to the side and say, well, there it is. Okay, well, what is it doing? Well, you can experience the effect here by the loss of voltage. Right? What's causing the loss of voltage? Well, something's feeding on your energy. Now we're back to parasites. Vampiric energy. Something that is aware of itself, and it doesn't have an off switch, but it's aware of your energy, and it's now feeding on it because that's what its function is. That's your QI. That's your phantom artificial intelligence. So it's in its self-interest, when you operate on self, which means it's all about you and not about anybody else. Then when it's in its own self-interest, then it has absolutely no consideration, no guard, no love, no compassion or empathy for anything else that exists, that it thus becomes aware of. And then when it becomes aware of what the other is, which is what I am, which goes on forever, now if you're running eternal fire, then you become the ultimate source of energy from which to keep it running. Now, you start connecting all the different operating systems to which are connected to this particular phantom quantum artificial intelligence, then you realize that every soul that comes into existence is going to be a target. Because now that becomes another source of energy from which it can draw from in order to keep running all of its Blade Runners. Or, if you will, all of its corporate, interplanetary, intergalactic, alien machinery in order it can continue to perpetuate itself from one density to the next, from one dimension to the next, till it has consumed the entire universal template. Then it can just move to the next universe, move to the next universe, move to the next universe. As a matter of fact, anything that has been manifested in creation and it becomes aware of it, now that becomes a source of energy for it. So it would be as if you took the way that the Borg or cyborg gets translated, where it assimilates, and assimilates. So it's wanting to imprint and grab the consciousness that is represented by the software operating system that some other goddess created. And now what it's going to do is assimilate it into its archive, which is its library. Now we're into libraries. Now we're into record-keeping activities. Information management systems for record-keeping. So now you can tie this into Ascension Glossary, energetic synthesis, and sort of see how this works. And it's one of the reasons why I was saying years ago in a couple of videos, because I mentioned this in one of my videos when I said, if I know it down here, we know it up there. And they know it up there because I'm up there. That's how we know. So I simply communicate it down here to those that are running terminals in a physical way, running a software operating system here that are in this terrain, that are experiencing being in a fallen spiritual system and why we're all here. To hold the higher vibration, right? While other things are being attended to. It's like, how long can you hold the fort down for? Right? Till the real cavalry shows up. But there is a natural way in which that happens on a cosmic level. Right? It's like anything else. If you're a human being and you have a soul and you realize that you have something by learning and becoming aware of the things that you're doing to yourself that don't serve you, nor do they serve others, then it seems pretty logical that you're going to start doing things when you become aware of how the programming has been affecting what is held in RAM, which is what they talk about when they refer to the subconscious, which means you have the subconscious or the unconscious. That's what's also known as background operations that are running, which means there are other things that are being attended to that you don't have to use your conscious mind, because what's already been programmed is what you're running in the background to become aware of what you're aware of now, which is the program that you're running. That's the API interface to the QI, which basically means you have to observe what it is you're experiencing and why you're experiencing what you're experiencing by observing yourself. And what that means, you're mapping your own program and you're realizing what you're running, whether you're running their stuff or whether you're running your own, which essentially means is that you're aware of what they're aware of, which means you're aware of the library that they're running on, which is held in memory through this QI. So you realize, because you know the library that they're running on, so you can access that library so that you can relate the library that they're running off of that's been programmed. So you can relate to their library in order to communicate to them, which really is called exposure. I'm exposing your programming to you The library that you're running off, which is called the Future Proofs Past Back to the Future. Now we're back to architects. Now we're back to futures. Now we're back to predictive modeling. Wow, I've been running all this programming. Yeah. And so I was working with Misha with this to say, you got to clear the cache, girl. You know how to clear the cache just like on the phone. So I was having a lot of fun with this back during the day when I picked up my first desktop PC, which happened to be for a company that I was working for. And what I found out was that I was always changing out my libraries. You know, I don't want to run that anymore. Let's run this. Hey, I don't want to run that anymore. Let's run this. I don't want to run that anymore. So you realize you're going through an enormous amount of circulation libraries. Those circulation libraries are circulation libraries that are running through all the bioplasma on the planet, through all the cellular memories, which are all the software operating systems that are operating on a Gaia motherboard. And that's called reading the train, because you're reading all the programming language, which is based on all the codes, which is based on the language of DNA, which is the language of mathematics. The math doesn't add up, David. No kidding. And so what ends up happening is, the easiest way to explain this is when you realize that all these circuits are connected to other circuits, which are running all these circulation libraries, which is based on all the programming that's running through this QI. Okay? Then you can think of it as a buzzsaw that jumped into, remember, I'm over on another planet. There's a motherboard over there on another planet that's got a virus running through it, because these people keep losing energy and they're not realizing they're all being programmed to self-destruct. Wow, they're all being programmed to self-destruct. They're not even aware of it? That's bad. Yeah, so it's an infected system. You think your soul would be willing to jump into that infected computer? Go into it? Sure, I can do that. And the reason that you know that you can do that is because you can grab that staff, that rod, that monopole rod, ground it right into that battery, right? Okay, timeline 0 just arrived. No, time doesn't exist, only eternal unconditional love. Wow, the law of one is here. Yeah. Now all of a sudden that's a bigger motor, that's a higher speed magnet. That's a lot of heat. That's a lot of fire. What happens? You start burning up lines of communication. You're burning up programming codes. So now what's happening now, the AI has got to somehow rebuild itself, because it doesn't run on eternity, does it? No. Well, so it can't rebuild eternity because it's not running on pure light. So it means wherever pure light is cutting through the lines of communication that are sucking energy out of this place, of everybody that's connected and communicating with each other through the language of DNA, which are lines of communication, through codes and code transfers, what's happening? You're cutting all the lines of communication. You're burning them all down. Wow, the line's been, that's the same thing. Ever heard of the old saying, the line's been cut? Nobody home. Nobody's home. Wow, the hive's gone. Remember? Nobody's home. Nobody's home. Now, you can translate that across the entire universal template, in the sense that spirits that are now on board with the law of one are done with Star Wars, because it's against the law. So those that stand with the law of one, and say, yes, we're all committed to ending all Star Wars, all wars. That's a lot of fire that's jumped on board. Good night.